Hey everyone, as Unit 2 is getting underway, I just wanted to give a quick announcement specifically about the reading worksheets assignments, but also I'll just use this announcement to run us through the learning module for Unit 2 and talk about some of the objectives behind the types of assignments that you'll see during each unit. Specifically, I wanted to talk about the reading worksheets, so I'll spend a little more time on those, as I already alluded to. Principally because I want you to understand what their purpose is. The purpose is to help us take a set of guided notes on our reading that will help us to read analytically for history. So reading history is different than reading for pleasure. And that's something that I think comes out in the resources that I've given you in the reading worksheets tab. When I run through the screencasts that I'm going to put on here in just a moment, I'll show you how to get to the reading worksheets template, how to do that through the learning module. If ever something isn't quite working in a learning module, though, you can always go over to the left-hand side in the menu and use the tabs that have been set up there. Also, let me just quickly apologize for being late on my intro video for Unit 2. It is up now if you're interested in that in the Unit 2 learning module. Alright, so here we are sharing my screen. This is the student view, what you hopefully see when you log into CNM Learn for our class. I'm going to click on Learning Modules so we can go and look at Unit 2 as an example of what we're doing here. I won't go through everything that's included in these modules. Hopefully that's relatively straightforward. But what I do want to look at are the reading worksheet assignments. So please note that there's this table of contents here that you can use to jump to different sections of the learning module as you need to. I'm going to open up Unit 2 readings, just to point out what we're reading. Everything here is online, nothing out of books you had to purchase. So we're reading chapters 1 through 4 of the American Yop. Then we're looking at a Library of Congress online exhibition. And then we are going to look at a series of primary documents about 17th century colonial New England. And I've put this note that the Unit 2 reading worksheet is just a little bit different than those for Units 3 to 5. The reason being there isn't a journal article that we're reading in Unit 2. And there is in those other units. Next, I'm going to jump over to the reading worksheet assignment. And what this will do is open up the spot where you will submit your reading worksheet. And you might be saying, well, where's the worksheet itself? You could have used the link that was there in the Unit 2 readings section that I was already at, or we can go over here to the reading worksheets tab. This will give you an explanation of what the objectives of this assignment are, and also it'll give you some resources here to think about how to read analytically. And that's really what these worksheets are about. They're trying to get you to focus on authors' main thesis statements, their big ideas, their evidence that they use to support those ideas or their thesis, and the interpretations that they provide to help connect the dots. Here are the links to the reading worksheet assignments. So for Townsend and Stowe, you'll click on this folder to get the unique reading worksheets for those books. But for Unit 2, we'll click on that link, and it will take us to a Google Drive version of the file. Now, whether or not you're signed into Drive, I signed out because it would give me editing rights, and that's something you won't have. So I wanted to show you essentially what you will see when you open this. You'll see the reading worksheet template. Then what you'll need to do is download it, either as a Word document, an OpenDoc format, rich text format, and also I think if you're logged into Drive, it'll give you the option of using Google Drive as well. With these reading worksheets, I want you to focus on the first and second questions of each reading worksheet as kind of the most important those that will drive your reading and your analysis of the specific chapters, documents, or article that you're looking at. So, for example, for the American Yop, during this unit, we're focusing on chapters 1 through 4, so that's several chapters. You want to scan through them, skim over them, and look at the headings, look at the pictures, look at topic sentences in order to pick out what you see as the key events, people, and dates that are presented across those 4 chapters. So for this first section, just make a list of what those key events, people, and dates are. Don't worry about memorizing them, so this isn't singling things out that you're going to need to memorize. This is just identifying them so that in the next section you can talk about their significance and explain why they're historically significant. You don't have to memorize names and dates for this class, as I mentioned, but you do need to figure out how to select what are the most relevant and important and significant parts of the chapter, and then how to explain why those things are significant. For some cues about that, I have these 2 links to to a website and to a film clip that talk about historical significance and how to evaluate it. One thing that I really want you to try to avoid when you talk about historical significance is the statement that these events made the nation into what it is today. It's a tempting statement to make because it seems to just neatly cover everything and round everything out, but it doesn't really tell us anything. It doesn't say anything specific. It doesn't say how events and people in the past shaped a certain cultural vision for the society or a political vision or impacted economics or whatever it might be. So again, be very specific when you talk about historical significance. For the second section, you can approach your description of historical significance any way you'd like to. You can write a short statement for each of the people, events, and dates that you listed in number 1. So if you want to do it that way, you can just combine 1 and 2 into essentially one big response. Or you don't really have to do it that way. Instead, you can write a paragraph or 2 about a couple of the most historically significant trends that we read about, and then use the events, people, and dates that you listed in number 1 as examples and evidence to show how what you're talking about is historically significant. So you'll use this list to guide your discussion of historical significance in number 2. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. Then you'll want to talk about the author's approach. You can also use those main events, people, and places that you've been talking about as examples, but you want to think about, what's the writing style like? Do you like it or not? What evidence do the authors present? What are their interpretations? Are their conclusions and interpretations convincing? Why or why not? Always use specific examples. If you ever see my comment back to you of show, don't tell, that means you need to add more specific examples. You can't just tell me that the writing style was engaging. You need to give an example of how and why it was engaging, how and why you found it engaging. You need to give an example of what the evidence was and why you found it convincing. Then this next one, list the different perspectives here, and that can also harken back to those first responses on this worksheet and thinking about what kinds of perspectives in terms of geography, race and ethnicity, gender, class, political affiliations, and so forth that are described and presented in these chapters. Cite specific examples of how events in the chapters might be relevant to current events. And then these last 2, I want you to put it all together. So what did you take away from these chapters? What do you think of them as a whole? And be specific in your responses, as specific as you can. Whoops, scrolled right past it. For the second one here in the reading worksheet, we're looking at the 1492 An Ongoing Voyage. First, it's a Library of Congress exhibit, and what you're going to do then again is use the first 2 questions to focus your analysis of the website. Focus on certain sections, click on this link, and then use Rael's paper acronym to evaluate a couple of the primary sources that you found within the exhibit. Then talk about why you chose those primary sources. then again, think about historical significance of those same primary sources. So again, you're focused on one specific part of the website, and then look at the bigger picture. What do these sources tell you about the larger themes of the website of 1492? And then this last one wants you to think about what's missing. What other perspectives would you like to read about or hear about from this website, and why? And then you'll do essentially the same thing for 17th century New England. Some of these documents are relatively short. Skim through them, get a sense of what they are, choose 4 of them, and then evaluate those 4 documents. Talk about why you picked those 4, why you see them as being significant, and again, by the end, what was missing, what else you'd like to see. At the very end of all of these worksheets, there's a question that asks about whether or not these readings worked well together in a whole. So the chapters from the American Yawp, the 1492 website, and then the primary sources from 17th century New England. How did these things work together? Did they work together well? And then why or why not? And please be as specific as you can, because those kinds of responses will help me to build a better reading section in this module in the future. So, all right. Thank you. Hopefully this helps to describe what's going on with the reading worksheets in a little bit better detail. Please let me know if you have any questions.